welcome you all to today's session on qualifying leads, your challenges on parade. In the next 30 minutes, I am privileged to have a stellar lineup of speakers including Vishwendra, Dennis, Gayatri, Anil, and Eric, who will share their invaluable insights on the art of lead qualification. I hope you all are ready to gain a deeper understanding of this critical aspect of business growth. So, without wasting any time, let's get ready to learn, grow, and conquer the challenges of lead qualification together. Over to you, Vishwendra.
Thank you, Ritika. Welcome everyone to this exciting session, Qualifying Leads, Your Challenges on Parade. We are thrilled to have you here today. I'm going to refer to a recent event when aliens appears in the Mexico Parliament. Scientists, UAP, UFO experts, including those at NASA, they have divided opinions about what they saw. There are those who claim these alien bodies on display are fake, while others assert that they are bodies that are not from the planet. And with that begin the exercise of research on alien bodies, examining data and historical events, findings in search of definitive answers. So, when a business lead appears on our sales or marketing pipeline, that also has a similar fate. There is a divided opinion between various stakeholders. Some people think that this is this is either a window shopper, or some people feel that this is a serious buyer. And that's where the process of qualification begins. So I'm Vishwendra, founder of Growth Sutra, and your host today. Alongside me is my co-host Dennis Roman. Together we are your guides on this enlightening journey into the world of B2B lead qualification. We began a monthly series on qualifying leads since April 2023, and we covered many important topics in the last 5 sessions that included key critical components of a lead and data-driven lead qualification, financial nuts and bolts of leads, frameworks for pursuing leads, seller persona and buyer persona, and how these personas influence lead qualification. We received many positive feedback and comments from participants on these sessions, and some of the participants are here today, and I thank on their encouraging words which they shared with us on these sessions. These sessions are available on demand and can be viewed on Growth Sutra YouTube and LinkedIn channels. Okay, without further ado, let me invite Dennis, my co-host. Dennis, would you like to quickly introduce yourself and also talk about the importance of leads qualification for emerging enterprises, sales and marketing leaders?
Thank you very much, Vish. Thank you, Ritika. And welcome everyone today. We know you have busy days, and we're honored to have you with us today. Vish, I'm so excited every time we do any of these, and this is actually our 10th webinar together, and this is the 5th or 6th one now, just on lead qualification.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so excited because I get to learn as much as everybody else. So there's so much content for today. I'm going to keep my remarks as brief as I can. So back to you, Vish. Let's go.
Thank you. So today we are not discussing lead qualification, but we are putting your challenges on parade. It's about recognizing, embracing, and conquering those hurdles that often remain hidden beneath the surface. As we dive into this parade of challenges, each one represents an opportunity for growth, whether it's an organizational complexity or to the intricacies of buyer persona. This session is designed to empower you with insights and actionable solutions. We have a fantastic panel of experts who will share their wisdom and experiences with us. We have Dr. Anil Jampala. He is the Senior Director, PSC Consulting. We also have Eric Siano. He is the Managing Director for Blue Leopard. And we'll be also joined by Gayathri in some time. She's the Head of Financial Services for PWC India. I'd like to invite all the panel speakers to share a quick introduction about themselves. Anil and Eric, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Vishwendra. My name is Anil Jampala. I currently work in the USA in electric utility space. I used to do work in the operations area. Now I switched to business development. So it's a lot of learning opportunity for me to listen to the panelists and also the audience.
Thanks, Anil. Eric?
Good morning, good evening, etc. My name's Eric. I run a small consultancy. I've been in the marketing and sales space my entire career, and like everybody else, really looking forward to this session because, like anybody else, I always learn by listening to others.
Thank you, Eric. So, we have received some excellent questions from you in advance, and we have integrated them into our discussion. But remember, this is your platform, so don't hesitate to ask more questions during the Q&A. We have actually divided this session in two parts. The first 20 minutes we'll have a discussion with the speakers, and second part is where we are going to open this session for you and invite you to share your questions as with the speakers. Let's begin the session. Prepare your questions, and let's embark on this journey of discovery and growth together. Our parade of challenges covers a broad spectrum. It includes organizational alignment to research strategies, tech integration, linguistic consistency, goal alignment, budget optimization, so on and so forth. We aim to explore each of these topics thoroughly and extract valuable insights from our speakers. So I'm going to ask my first question to the panelists and to my co-host as well. So, what you guys perceive as the most critical in the lead qualification success that the sales and marketing leaders should be mindful about? So, Dennis, this question is for you, Anil, and Eric.
So I'll briefly just mention that I'm practically religious on this issue. I feel that marketing, the lift that marketing is asked to accomplish with the always too limited budget, is to round up as many opportunities as they possibly theoretically can find to start feeding into the top of the funnel. Now, on paper, that sounds good, but my experience is quite different, and that by pre-qualifying the types of institutions and types of buyers and titles of buyers at their jobs, not the people themselves, just the lines of business and the titles of the buyers of the institutions. By qualifying these opportunities earlier, the top of the funnel gets it gets much more narrow. And by narrowing the top of the funnel, basically turning the funnel upside down, one is able to eliminate a lot of noise and clutter and allow for the sales team and marketing teams to collaboratively chase much fewer of the accounts. That's what I think is one of the burning issues that can really change the direction of the success for any of our sales and marketing team members.
Thank you, Dennis. I see that Gayathri has also joined. Welcome, Gayathri, to this session.
Hi, very good morning, good evening, good day to everybody.
Thank you. We just began with the first question. And in fact, the first question, maybe I can ask you this question. You can also share a quick introduction about yourself and give us.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for that. Hi, this is Gayathri Parthasarathy, known as Guy. Been in the industry for 36 years now. Almost, I would say, more than 30 years of it in financial services. I have worked for iFlex Solutions, which is Oracle Financial Services software now. And that's where I met with Dennis and, and then we moved into different paths. And I worked after that with Accenture, IBM, KPMG, and right now I'm with PWC. I lead the financial services business for PWC in India, and I'm also the global financial services technology leader for PWC. So that's my profile, and happy to be here. And to the question that you asked, if I have to answer that point, right, in terms of, I would say, I think Dennis touched upon on more than anything, right, in terms of the buyers, maybe the decision making process, etc., right? I would also add to that, right? First and foremost, look at in terms of how do you really look at it from a lead perspective? What are the ask versus what you have from a solution perspective, or what you can do? That's a very, very important aspect to look at it, right? And I always believe that that is when really you say it's a go or a no go kind of a thing, right? You don't overestimate yourself, or or underestimate yourself, both ways. And from that's true for the client as well. That's a very, very important thing in terms of qualification part. And the second thing I would say also is very clearly and very honestly assess the competition, very, very honestly, and see in terms of who's been working on that for some time, or what's the competition, who has spent the time, and how much time have we spent on it, and is it like, in terms of, can you feel it, right? Is it real, right? And if you have not spent the time, and if you're not, and assessing the competition is so critical there. And I strongly believe that that's a second thing I would like to add in terms of from qualification part of it. Thanks, and back to you.
Thank you, Gayatri.
Thank you.
These are valuable insights. Anil, do you want to share your inputs?
Yes, yes, Vishwendra. I'm currently working on a federal regulation-related initiative that will be effective in about 18 months. So there are multiple audience that deal with this regulation: compliance managers, planners, operational people, and the sourcing people. So sometimes you may get an RFI, sometimes you may get an RFP. So how do you deal with these multiple constituents, and where do you focus your attention is one challenge. The second one is, how do they know that you exist, right?
Yeah.
I think somebody was summarizing me in 3 hours to go with the Indian Bollywood movie that became popular this year. Relationships and reputation and results. At the end of the day, we need to show results, but to get the results, we need to have a reputation, and that's not enough. You need to have relationships.
Correct. Yeah. So I think these are very critical points, especially what Gayatri mentioned about go or no go strategy and the competition. And then the one which you talked about is your presence, how you make your presence felt within that audience with the kind of messaging or the value which you can bring to the table. Thank you, Anil. Eric, over to you.
For me, it becomes a job for marketing to do a better job up front. And what I mean by that is targeting is going to drive about 80% of the success. So if you're looking at it, we need to define ideal customers, and then we need to go a layer deeper in once we identify those ideal customers. Dennis and I connected because we both agreed on a simple concept that, yeah, it's nice that companies have revenues, they have a need, they have all these things, but they also have to have the cash, the ability to pay. So doing some work up front to understand so that we put higher quality leads into the pipeline, to me, that's how you win the game.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I think marketing has a very critical role to play here, as you rightly said. Now there are a couple of burning issues, and that's something which is especially in B2B deals. There's a lot of complexity which is involved, and these are some questions which I have received from the audience. And some questions I received from Anil as well. So one question, Gayatri, for you: how do we take into consideration and address incumbent vendors during lead qualification? So if you can share your thoughts, especially because this is a critical area, especially when we look at B2B deals complexities. There in these B2B deals, we any opportunities we also see incumbent vendors there. So how do you address that as part of the lead qualification process?
Absolutely an important question. See, incumbency always gives you, right, in terms of it can become binary sometimes.
Yeah.
Depends on in terms of, right, what's the kind of customer experience more than anything that has been there, right? In terms of, do they want to continue? Do they want to sort of move on to a different path and find a new partner? And that is a very important thing to assess. But incumbency always gives you the kind of, right, I would call it as a little unfair advantage, because obviously, or fair advantage, whichever way you want to look at it, because you have put in your hard work in the first place to win it. So I would call it as maybe a fair advantage only. So they have the maybe necessary and the sufficient data points, right, for first and foremost about the lead. They also know in terms of the buying patterns. They also know in terms of what would be the pricing points, right? And everything is available to you, and incumbency provides you all that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, while all of this is positive for you, maybe there are people who are not happy with your service or not happy with the kind of solution you have provided or your product. And directionally, if your product is, right, not something which is future, proofing itself, and it is thinking for the next whatever, right, in terms of time frame that the customer is looking at it, then it is the best time to enter and position and move the incumbency out and put what is right for the customer. Yes, it will be initially the transition will look and seem tough, but once you're solutioning it right, and once you're right, in terms of dialoguing with the customer to say how you're helping them for their strategy and how you solve it together, then the problems do definitely sort of, diminish in their size, and you then solution it pretty well. That's the way I put it as.
Yeah, I think that's also involves a lot of understanding the incumbent partner and the technology landscape, or the solution landscape which is there with that specific account, and then how you kind of delve your messaging to address those issues. But thank you, Gayathri. Eric, question for you. How do we use references, as a way to get through the barriers during this lead qualification process?
References are critical in your process, and they're critical in a very specific way. Customers don't really care about us. What they care about is solving their want, their need, their problem. So we need to use references to let the customer know how we resolve their issue. Right? A lot of what I do when I'm working with clients is helping them figure out what outcomes are they trying to achieve, and then how do we help them resolve those outcomes, rather than go in and do a whole demo and look at all the cool stuff that we do. Right? So to me, the references help us cement that point of how we help them achieve their desired outcomes.
Right. Yeah. So
I think Vishwendra, I just wanted to add to what Eric said. I was watching this movie on air, Nike's success with Michael Jordan. It comes out very clear that how Nike was able to upstage the leading competitors to get Michael Jordan's endorsement.
Right. Yeah. 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 So that the references actually adds a lot of credibility to the value which you put to the table. So yeah, thank you. Anil, question to you. If you could share a recent example on lead qualification from utilities industry, especially in North America space. Utility industry is a very small segment of industry, but it's very complex in terms of the way you look at the value chain. So how do you you did talk about about the the groups you need to interact with, especially when you shared an example. So could you share a recent example where you had seen a lead qualification success, especially in the utilities industry in North America space?
Yeah, we are going in a couple of fronts. One is with the new regulation, that's a new opportunity. That's where we are reaching out to prospects and letting them know through white papers and such that we exist, and then we can offer services to the needs that they have. That's one. Because many people may know that we work in that space as well, right? So that's where it becomes important. Marketing efforts, like Eric was mentioning earlier, they need to know that we have expertise in this area. We can offer solutions in this area. That's one. In the existing areas, there are new prospects that we are finding. I listened to Dennis earlier about using references and how to reach to prospective customers when you meet them at conferences and such. We have good success, and the doors are slightly opening. We are not there in yet. Like Gayathri has mentioned, there are already existing vendors there. So we need to demonstrate, as Eric is saying, what's the value that we deliver to them.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's because there is a complexity. So there are various tools which you did talk about, like the reports, which may act as a lead magnet sometimes, which can help to create awareness and to reinforce your thought leadership to the target audience. And then the way you engage with them with the help of other tools, either references or the solution messaging or framework. I think that's something which could really be of interest, and it's applicable to almost all industries. Dennis, if I may ask a question to you, what about leads that are in the RFP stages? What frameworks and strategies that can be used for lead qualification when there is a RFP process that is involved?
Okay, Vish, yeah, I am going to talk. I'll talk about that very briefly. I just want to echo something from Anil and a little bit from Gayathri as well. Most often we look at regulation as if we got to go to the dentist. But I think underneath Anil's remarks, I realized that a new regulation is creating new opportunities for the sellers. And that regulation could be your friend. As soon as a new regulation comes in, two new targets that can be pursued is the compliance officer and the chief risk officer. So it's fairly interesting. And then on the Gayathri side, if you're an incumbent with new regulations coming in, are you prepared to make those adjustments to stave off competitors who are getting ready to make those regulations come alive with their own solutions? So it could be your friend, it could be your risk, if you can't step up to it. Anyway, I enjoyed that very much. On the RFP side, I just have a few things. So the RFP could either be handed to you, which doesn't happen that very often, or you chased to go get it, or you went after it. Now, if somebody was going to give out an RFP on a particular subject, there's a good chance that, for instance, Gayathri might end up seeing it, right, given the notoriety of her firm. But maybe some point vendors would, in fact, get an opportunity to do that. So now an RFP is out. The RFP opens the door to have a really good dialogue with the customer. Obviously, you want to have the dialogue one-on-one if you can get away with it. Often the customers will refrain from that and make all the vendors ask all the questions all at the same time. But you're always, you're always working towards getting a private conversation about the RFP. And one of my strongest points on this is no matter what the question is that the customer asked, and many of them are yes and no, I want our audience to be aware that answering yes and no questions with yes and no is horrible. If you can say yes, and how come this is important, or if you have to say no, before you say no, try to find out if it is really important or is it just a tick sheet on a sheet. And then everything you hear, document back to the person who said it to you so you have this. And all the questions that you ask should be open-ended. So if you have a 100-page RFP and you have 100 questions in the RFP, you don't want to ask the questions from page 1 to page 100. You want to prioritize the questions that are important to you, even if you're jumping around in the RFP in order to get insights. I could go on, I got a list of 100 things like this, but let me quit there. All right, Vish, I think it's a good time to cross over maybe on the research side, or what I like to call the prequel.
Yeah.
I alluded to this earlier on the funnel. In my opinion, the prequel is probably the most anemic muscle in the marketing team's corporate body. Front-end research is just not accomplished at the level that it could be. And my recommendation is people are using the financial statements. There's all kinds of research. I'm not disputing, there are many kinds, but the one kind that isn't really executed very well at this point, in my opinion, across the technology sectors, is the financial research that can be done. You said earlier, and Eric brought it up again, why not go after the companies that are rich as opposed to the companies that are broke? That's kind of almost a tongue-in-cheek question, but it bears out the concept that in the financial statements is so much information that in fact you can eliminate a lot of noise at the top of the funnel by taking that approach. Again, this is my favorite area of subject, but I don't want to steal a lot of thunder here. So let's go on to our other panelists. Go ahead, Vish.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for setting that context, Dennis. I think I can ask Gayathri the first question. Gayathri, how can financial services benefit from extensive research and lead qualification?
Immensely to the question, right?
Yeah.
The research, right, in terms of number one, right, in terms of what are the most important problems that the customers are planning to solve, right? And what are the that is at a customer segment level, if you really look at it, right?
Yeah.
And it can be absolutely a territory, geography, whatever level, and it can also be in terms of truly kind of primary research which will give you data and information on what will be the budget for them to spend on in the immediate next, say, 18, 24, 36, whatever months, right? Which is very, very critical to know in terms of what they will be spending on, what's the kind of budget they are going to put on against their priorities. Yeah. So that research is going to immensely help you. Also, research on, right, in terms of if you already know a certain problem that is absolutely burning, right, for them to solve, right? You look at obviously you have enough of public domain data. You look at a set of banks, right, in terms of whether they are small, medium, large, if you want to consider it that way, or in my country, in India, if it is public sector, private sector, small finance banks, and NBFCs, non-banking financial corporations, so on and so forth. If you really look at it, what are their burning problems and what are their aspirations more than anything? What is their growth aspiration? What is their aspiration on customer retention? What is their aspiration on loyalty? What is their aspiration on, right, in terms of improvement of asset quality and asset growth, whatever, right, as a financial services institution? If you really look at in terms of what has been their performance and what is their their analyst commitments and reports do say, and research on that, and being competitive in the market, what they need to do, definitely helps you qualify the leads without a doubt. You exactly know whether you can provide a solution which will solve the problem, and which is like, I would say that the authenticity of what you are going to even provide to the customer is backed by a good quality research information, right? That way,
Yeah.
it's going to help for every institution in financial services, be it banks, be it right insurance company, be it in terms of AMCs, wealth managers, anybody, it will definitely help. That's how I would say. And if you have good research, in my mind, you don't need to, I strongly believe, you don't need to wait for a customer to sit and write the RFP. You will go position even an unsolicited solution. Rather, that that will solve the problem because you have absolutely the backing of good research. And if it will solve their problem, they would absolutely jump at it. That's the way I look at it in terms of research. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri. I think these are very valuable points. And in fact, if you look at the sales, especially in financial sector, I mean, there's a lot which we can learn from the financial services industry, the kind of the sales and marketing efforts which have been put. I think, in my opinion, financial services sector is certainly way ahead in terms of the sales and marketing strategies. Anil,
Hey,
yeah,
Vish, may I add something to what she said?
yeah, Eric, please go ahead.
In doing research, for me, it's important to understand corporate priorities, right? And what I call the color of money. Because if you're targeting a project, who is paying, whether it's coming out of IT, operations, et cetera, because all firms manage to keep the expenditures by category in a certain limit. So who's paying and what the priority of this project is vis-a-vis strategic goals, to me, gives me a very solid idea of, am I looking at a short sales process or a longer sales process, particularly if I'm trying to sell technology into a company, right? And I'm being paid for out of IT, and in their portfolio planning process, I don't make the cut. So it's really understanding the priority and am I business critical to them? Because if it's business critical, I'll get funded. If not, right, we have too many dependencies on other things on whether I get funded or not.
Yeah. I think that's so budget is certainly an important consideration as part of lead qualification and
Exactly. That's what I said also. The budget part of it, in terms of especially the top priorities, it's so critical from a
Yeah.
corporate priority perspective, right? So
Exactly.
absolutely agree with that.
Thank you, Gayatri and Alec. Anil, do you have anything to add quickly?
No, I think Eric and Gayatri made the point very well. Color of money is easy to remember. When it is there, you go after that. That becomes easy for everybody.
Right, yeah. So I think, we can actually talk a length about the money and how the money can influence the leads. But we have our limitations. So we have already exceeded 20 minutes at the moment, but this discussion is certainly getting more engaging and interesting. However, we have to also give an opportunity to our audience who have been listening patiently to our conversation to raise their questions. So with this now, I'm inviting audience, if they have any questions for the speakers, you can raise your hand. You can click on the option which has been provided here. You raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll allow you to speak, and then you can put your question directly to the speaker. Anyone who'd like to go first? Okay. So, Ritika, do you see anyone who's raised their hand? Because I'm not able to see all the participants here.
No, participants, if you have any questions, so you can raise your hand in the React button and we'll answer your query.
Vish, you failed to tell the audience that we were going to give away a BMW to the most interesting question that got put to us today.
Yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, we have a BMW, which is going to be. So there's going to be, we are going to run a lottery to offer this BMW. Okay, never mind. I think we'll just while the audience, the participants, put together their question. I can probably ask one more question, as we have another. I mean, we can extend this session to another 5 to 7 minutes before we take a pause. I'd also like to mention that because we have so many questions which we have received, so we have organized another session on 12th of October at the same time, where we would be taking up some of the other interesting topics which we have put together, and which has been also suggested by a couple of participants. So while waiting for question from the audience, let me actually begin a discussion on organizational challenges, and especially when we look at sales and marketing alignment, especially around leads, around prospects, the terminology differs, the way they approach leads, that differs. So marketing actually talks about marketing qualified leads, while sales talk about sales qualified leads, and there are two different groups which are being formed. And it's important to have these two groups aligned, while there are other groups which could also matter a lot, like for instance the solutioning group, or the products group, who have to be also involved in terms of lead qualification. But sales and marketing are the primary organizational groups who are actually focusing on this lead for qualification. So, Gayatri, if I may ask you, how do you see, the sales and marketing bridge this gap when reporting to different lines? So, sales and marketing organizations report to different, different leaders. So, how do you see these two organizations can bridge the gap, especially from the perspective of lead qualification?
See, I see that in terms of lead qualification is a primary function of, from a sales perspective, sales organization, while marketing will enable from a branding, right, in terms of connections, so on and so forth. To me, as long as the responsibilities are very clear in terms of what one has to do, right, in terms of the roles and responsibilities, and it varies from organization to organization on how it is structured as well, right? It doesn't matter. I've been at least part of 4 or 5 large organizations. To me, the functions are right executed properly because people do what they're good at, and that's where they belong to, right? And unless there is a little bit of an aberration, right, that can be corrected. But the most important thing is to have a clear roles and responsibilities well outlined between the two functions very clearly, sales and marketing in terms of structuring. And to me, in terms of different organization placing them differently is absolutely not a problem, because people know and people get to learn about it pretty quickly. If you're even people for them, in terms of people who are there long time, it's a way of life. For people who are being hired as laterals, it's a learning, and it comes in my mind naturally, depending on the skills as well. Because people who do sales and marketing really know in terms of what they're good at and what their customers need and what are their KPIs and what they need to do to be successful in an organization, and they learn it. And the functions per se, it is just a question of roles and responsibility, definitely, and living up to it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Gayatri. I understand you have to leave now. But thank you so much for your valuable insights. If there are any questions from the audience, I'll share that with you on the email, and we can respond to that participant. But thank you so much for your valuable insights and being part of the session.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Eric, connecting the dots here, when you look at, while Gayatri did mention about who normally owns or lead the lead qualification process in the organization. How do you see which function actually, from sales and marketing perspective, must be the owner of this lead qualification, so that the entire journey becomes smoother?
I will tell you, one of my favorite bosses ever told me the truth. You don't own the customer, right? Nobody owns the customer other than the customer. So I look at this as 8 key things that we need to align marketing and sales on. One is creating a common understanding so we align on stages. Who is on point to communicate? What triggers it from one point to the next? The next is an agreed to lead to close or revenue cycle for between marketing and sales. Then it's an integrated messaging strategy so that we all know what we're saying, how it was said, including the tone. Shared goals. And I've done some marketing, sales, and service alignment workshops with various Fortune 500 companies, and I always get them to align around revenue. It's an easy, not marketing qualified leads, not sales but on revenue. We're trying to drive a revenue number. Then a coordinated lead cycle that defines the process that we do.
Yeah.
The tough ones are, we talked about it earlier, an automated customer prioritization or lead qualification. How do we prioritize? The danger there is that we create self-fulfilling prophecies, that if we say somebody's a hot lead, we treat them as such. If we say somebody's a cooler lead, we treat them as such. The other is campaign point insight, so that if we're running marketing campaigns, if we're running nurture campaigns or sales, that everybody knows about the campaign and what we're talking about. And the last and probably most important is that we shared a customer profile so that we're all talking to the same type of customer, right? That I'm not talking to what I think is a customer as marketing and sales is talking to them slightly different, and we're not talking to them in the same way. So for me, it's aligning around those 8 concepts to drive alignment between the 2 groups. And I always include service, customer care, whatever it is, because they're very critical in driving retention, right? And driving retention means we got to put less in the top of the pipeline, because we're not replacing customers, we're bleeding out the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do agree that matrix actually is very important, especially to bring to align various organizations, various groups within the organization, and to the retention strategy and the other area that you talked about. That these are certainly important, especially to address the organizational challenges. Anil, from a consulting perspective, where do you see this alignment, and what challenges? What are the challenges that can be overcome to any specific strategies?
I think Eric made excellent points, because different entities in the organization may be dealing with the same customer. It's like everybody feels a part of the elephant, but not the elephant itself. So it is important that we understand the customer and the current issues that we are addressing.
Understood. Okay. All right. So, Dennis, do you have anything to add here, especially from organizational challenges? Otherwise, we'll bring this session to an end.
Well, I'm not as optimistic, I guess, as maybe Gayathri suggested about the organizational restrictions. The point made about the roles and responsibilities and assignments being clear, that everyone would agree with that. I find a lot of challenges because sales has a boss and marketing has a boss, and they often are different bosses. Seldom are they the same boss, and seldom do they actually report into the same boss. And I have found it to be problematic where they're just not aligned as they should be. The litmus test for me on that question is, because it's a subjective opinion, obviously, opinions are subjective, but it's a subjective opinion on my part, because if you ask marketing if they feel like they're an equal partner in the process with sales, I bet you not 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 50 would say yes to that. Generally, marketing feels, a little bit like the country cousin or something. They're somewhere off the tip of the arrow. They're somewhere a little further back, and it's frustrating for marketing because they can't get close enough to the front end of this thing to be making the contributions that they could be making if they were brought in earlier. So that's just a general observation, but obviously everything's working because people are selling stuff all the time. It's just we think we can improve the efficiency if marketing was given a role more as a partner than as a, I don't want to say servant, but I'll say servant.
Yeah. Well, that's we have seen in our corporate lives, especially there's a lot of if there's no clarity on specific leads, then there's a lot of finger pointing that happens between various groups. And actually, if we can bring all these solutions that we talked about together, we can have a better aligned teams, and I can address these leads in a much better manner, which could actually improve the overall success rate, especially converting leads to customers. All right, so I think we extended this discussion for 10 more minutes, and this discussion is certainly engaging. The very insightful as well. There's a lot of valuable insights which is coming from all the speakers. However, we need to take a pause as we actually had this session for 35 minutes actually, to be more precise. But we have a couple of more areas that we want to take up and discuss with our speakers, and these are especially from the perspective of the messaging, the marketing campaigns, how to optimize budgets, aligning goals and expectations. There's a discussion which has happened on the matrix side. So there are a lot of these topics which are still being unanswered. The questions about these topics are still unanswered. So we'll be taking up these questions in our next session, which is there on 12th of October at the same time. This event is now live on our LinkedIn handle, so you can confirm your participation on that LinkedIn. We'll also share on the event page. We'll share the link of the event. And if you have any questions for the speakers, you can share it with me on my LinkedIn handle, or you can send it on my email ID, which is vishwendra@growthsutras.com, and we'll address your question there. Thank you so much for joining this session. I'd like to also thank Anil, Eric, who has taken their time, valuable time, and agreed to join this interesting session, and of course the insights that they shared. I'd also like to thank Gayathri. Of course, she had to leave early, but all the speakers have added a lot of value to the conversation which we had today. I'd also like to thank Dennis. It seems Dennis is not there in the panel, but it might be some technical issue. But thank you, Dennis, for being part of this session and being a co-host. And thank you, Ritika, for managing the logistics. Next time, I'm hopeful that we'll get these questions from the participants, and we can address those questions during the session. Last but not the least, I'd like to thank all the participants who joined and who listened patiently to this conversation. I look forward to your participation in the next session, which is scheduled on 12th of October. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining this.